A radioactive spider, a bold move, and a boy who changes his destiny forever. Yes, I'm talking about our friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Today we take a dive into the world of Spider-Man comics, exploring the incredible journey of young Peter Parker. It all began way back in 1962 with Amazing Fantasy number 15. Created by Stan Lee and Steve Ditko, Spider-Man revolutionized the world of superheroes. We finally had a hero with incredible powers, but with common problems: late homework, bullies at school, and of course, the difficulty of impressing his crush, Mary Jane Watson. One of the biggest lessons we learned from Peter Parker: with great power comes great responsibility. After gaining his powers from a radioactive spider, Peter learns the hard way the importance of using them wisely. Uncle Ben's death marks a pivotal moment, pushing him to become the superhero we know today. Over the years, we've seen Spider-Man in so many memorable series. There's the timeless, the amazing Spider-Man, Spectacular Spider-Man, and who can forget the stories in Ultimate Spider-Man that redefined the character for a new generation. In this video and in those to come, we will retrace Spider-Man's entire long career. We will do so starting from the series that saw him born, Amazing Spider-Man. Stay with us. Young Peter Parker is an intelligent but shy and often bullied high school student. He lives with his aunt and uncle, Ben and May Parker, and has a great passion for science. One day, while attending a science demonstration, Peter is bitten by a radioactive spider. Soon after, he discovers that he has acquired extraordinary powers: superhuman strength, agility, the ability to stick to surfaces, and a spider sense that warns him of danger. Initially, Peter decides to use his new powers to earn money and become famous. He creates a costume and participates in television shows such as Spider-Man. However, after a show, Peter has a chance to stop a thief, but decides not to intervene, thinking it was none of his business. A short time later, that thief kills his Uncle Ben during a robbery. Peter, devastated by grief, decides to capture the killer, only to discover that it is the same criminal he had let escape. It is in this moment that Peter realizes the meaning of his Uncle Ben's words: with great power comes great responsibility. From that point on, Peter Parker dedicates his life to fighting crime as Spider-Man. First story: Spider-Man vs. the Fantastic Four. Peter Parker, after the death of his Uncle Ben, is struggling with financial problems as he and his Aunt May struggle to pay the bills. To find a way to earn money, Peter decides to join the Fantastic Four, thinking that being part of a supergroup will solve his problems. So, as Spider-Man, he enters the Baxter Building, the team's headquarters. Spider-Man confronts the members of the Fantastic Four, demonstrating his abilities, but ultimately discovers that the group is a non-profit team and cannot offer him financial compensation. He then realizes that he will have to find another way to make money and face his responsibilities. Peter Parker looks for a new job to help his aunt. While searching for a solution, he discovers that a criminal called the Chameleon is trying to steal military secrets. The Chameleon is a master of disguise, able to assume the appearance of anyone, and plans to frame Spider-Man for his crimes. Spider-Man, however, manages to unmask the Chameleon and hand him over to the authorities, proving his innocence. This issue also marks the beginning of the complicated relationships between Spider-Man and the police, as he is often seen as an untrustworthy vigilante. First story: Duel to the Death with the Vulture. The first part of the comic introduces the Vulture, an elderly criminal who flies in a mechanical suit and uses his abilities to carry out thefts. New York is terrorized by his criminal exploits, and Spider-Man sets out to stop him. Peter, always struggling with financial problems, also tries to sell photos of Spider-Man in action to the Daily Bugle to earn money and help his Aunt May. While trying to take photos of the Vulture, Spider-Man is defeated by the villain and thrown into a silo. However, thanks to his scientific intelligence, Peter manages to build a device that disturbs the Vulture's flight. Using this invention, Spider-Man manages to defeat him and turns him over to the police. Peter then sells the photos to the Daily Bugle, thus beginning his career as a freelance photographer for the newspaper. Second story, The Uncanny Threat of the Terrible Tinkerer. In the second story, Spider-Man faces the Tinkerer, a genius inventor who appears to work as an electronics repairman. Peter, looking for a part-time job, comes across the Tinkerer's workshop, but discovers that the inventor is designing equipment to spy on powerful businessmen. The Tinkerer has in fact created a network of electronic devices that infiltrated the homes of his victims. Spider-Man manages to unravel the plan and stop the Tinkerer, who turns out to be part of an alien race that was trying to sabotage Earth, although this aspect of the story remains ambiguous. The story begins with the introduction of Dr. Otto Octavius, a brilliant but arrogant scientist who works on nuclear experiments with the use of mechanical arms. During one of these experiments, an explosion occurs that fuses the mechanical arms to his body, allowing Octavius to control them with his mind. The accident drives him mad, and Otto becomes the criminal known as Dr. Octopus. Doc Ock begins a crime spree, using his mechanical arms to terrorize the city. Spider-Man decides to face him, but is brutally defeated in an initial battle. This is one of the first times Spider-Man truly feels defeated, both physically and mentally. Depressed, Peter Parker considers abandoning his superhero career, feeling inadequate. Meanwhile, the Fantastic Four's Human Torch visits Peter's school to give a motivational speech to the students, urging them to never give up, despite the difficulties. This speech inspires Peter to return to his Spider-Man costume and face Dr. Octopus again. In the second confrontation, Spider-Man uses his intelligence and determination to neutralize Doc Ock, proving that he can win even against seemingly unbeatable enemies. Ultimately, Spider-Man defeats Dr. Octopus and turns him over to the police, solidifying his role as a determined and resilient hero. The story begins with Peter Parker continuing to manage his double life as Spider-Man and a high school student. Meanwhile, a criminal known as Flint Marko manages to escape from prison and hides in an industrial area where he is exposed to a mysterious nuclear explosion. This explosion causes a mutation in his body, allowing him to turn his body into sand at will. Thus, Sandman was born. Sandman begins a crime spree, using his powers to shapeshift and become virtually invulnerable. Spider-Man tries to stop him, but discovers that his opponent can dissolve and recompose at will, making it difficult to capture or harm him. In a dramatic sequence, Spider-Man confronts Sandman in a school, which coincidentally is the same one Peter Parker attends. During the battle, Spider-Man uses his cunning to cause Sandman to be sucked up by a large vacuum cleaner, capturing him and neutralizing the threat. After Sandman's defeat, Spider-Man manages to take exclusive photos of the battle and sells them to the Daily Bugle. This continued success as a photographer helps Peter Parker support himself and his Aunt May, but at the same time the director of the Bugle, J. Jonah Jameson, continues his campaign of vilification against Spider-Man, claiming that he is a threat to the city. The story opens with Dr. Doom, the main enemy of the Fantastic Four, planning to eliminate the group. Doom seeks allies among other supervillains and decides to try to recruit Spider-Man, seeing him as a potential accomplice. Doom doesn't know, however, that Spider-Man is a hero. Meanwhile, Peter Parker continues his high school life, trying to balance school and his job as a photographer for the Daily Bugle. J. Jonah Jameson, as usual, continues to discredit Spider-Man in the newspapers, fueling public misunderstanding of the hero. Dr. Doom manages to locate Spider-Man and proposes an alliance to destroy the Fantastic Four. Naturally, Spider-Man refuses. Offended, Doom decides to make Spider-Man his new target, determined to destroy him. Thus begins a battle between the two, with Doom using his advanced technology and traps to try to defeat the hero. During the fight, Dr. Doom manages to capture Flash Thompson, Peter's classmate, who was wearing a Spider-Man costume as a prank at the time. Doom, believing he has captured the real Spider-Man, threatens to kill him. Peter is forced to intervene quickly and cunningly, facing Doom in an intense fight and ultimately managing to free the Flash. Ultimately, Dr. Doom is forced to retire, leaving Spider-Man victorious but still under constant threat of being misunderstood by both his schoolmates and the public, fueled by Jameson's smear campaign. The story opens with news on a monster that wanders in the swamps of Florida, terrifying the local population. The monster is known as the Lizard, a gigantic creature with the strength of a reptile. J. Jonah Jameson of the Daily Bugle publicly challenges Spider-Man, claiming that he would never be able to capture Lizard. Peter Parker, seeing the opportunity to earn some money and get exclusive photos, convinces Jameson to finance his journey to Florida, bringing his camera with him. Once arrived, Spider-Man begins to investigate and discovers that the Lizard is actually Dr. Curt Connors, a brilliant scientist who had lost an arm. Dr. Connors, in an attempt to regenerate his limb through an experimental serum based on reptile genes, has accidentally transformed himself into a giant lizard. When he becomes Lizard, he loses control of his humanity, transforming himself into a violent creature with the instinct to dominate the human world. Spider-Man desperately tries to find a cure for Connors, while repeatedly faces the Lizard in the swamps and in the abandoned workshops. Despite the superhuman force of the creature and its aggression, Spider-Man manages to create an antidote based on the scientific notes of Connors. After a last clash, he manages to administer the serum in Lizard, transforming him again into Curt Connors. Connors' family is grateful to Spider-Man for bringing the Doctor back to normal, and Peter manages to take exclusive photos for the Daily Bugle. However, as always, J. Jonah Jameson minimizes his contribution and continues his campaign against Spider-Man, ignoring the hero's true heroic acts. After his defeat in The Amazing Spider-Man #2, Adrian Toomes, aka the Vulture, manages to escape from prison. His first thought is to get revenge on Spider-Man. Meanwhile, Peter Parker finds himself dealing with the usual problems of school and his life with Aunt May, but is soon distracted by the news of Toomes' escape. Spider-Man and the Vulture face each other for the first time after the villain's return. But during the battle, Peter is wounded in the shoulder and the Vulture escapes. Despite the pain and injury, Spider-Man doesn't give up. In the end, using his cunning, Spider-Man manages to predict the Vulture's moves and defeats him by trapping him with his web, bringing Toomes to justice once again. This issue shows Spider-Man's determination and resilience, capable of overcoming his physical weaknesses through ingenuity. This issue contains two stories: The Terrible Threat of the Living Brain. In Peter's school, Midtown High, comes the Living Brain, a supercomputer designed to answer any question. The mechanical brain is brought to school for a scientific demonstration. During the experiment, two technicians argue about how to split the machine's proceeds and, in the struggle, cause a malfunction that causes the living brain to spiral out of control. The machine begins to destroy the school, and Spider-Man is forced to intervene to stop it. Meanwhile, at school, Peter and Flash Thompson are forced to compete in a boxing match. Thanks to his powers, Peter is able to easily defeat Flash, but holds back so as not to reveal his strength. Spider-Man tackles the Torch. The second part of the issue is a short story in which Spider-Man has a falling out with Johnny Storm, the Human Torch of the Fantastic Four. The two challenge each other, and Spider-Man once again proves his valor, managing to stand up to the Torch, despite their constant bickering. This issue explores both the school dimension of Peter's life and his ties to other Marvel heroes. In this issue, we meet Max Dillon, an electrician who, following a lightning accident, gains the power to generate and manipulate electricity, becoming Electro. Determined to use his new powers to enrich himself, he begins a series of crimes, including robbing a bank. Meanwhile, Aunt May becomes seriously ill, forcing Peter to worry about her as he continues to fight crime. In a moment of desperation, he decides to step forward as Spider-Man to raise money for May's medical treatment, taking photos of her fight with Electro and selling them to the Daily Bugle. His confrontation with Electro is intense, with the supervillain demonstrating formidable power. Spider-Man manages to defeat Electro by using water to neutralize his electrical powers after luring him to a rooftop. Although victorious, Peter reflects that his fight against crime was never over and returns to caring for Aunt May. This issue introduces one of Spider-Man's most dangerous and recurring enemies, once again showing the precarious balance between Peter's personal life and his responsibilities as a hero. In this issue, Spider-Man faces the Enforcers, a gang of criminals composed of Montana, an expert in the use of the lasso, Fancy Dan, a master of martial arts, and Ox, a giant with brute strength. The Enforcers work for the mysterious Big Man, a new crime boss who is trying to take control of the New York underworld. Spider-Man must discover Big Man's identity while facing dangerous traps from the Enforcers. During his investigation, Peter Parker continues to deal with the difficulties of his daily life and the way J. Jonah Jameson continues to discredit him through the Daily Bugle. In the end, Spider-Man manages to defeat the Enforcers one by one, and during the battle with Big Man, he discovers that the leader of the gang is Frederick Foswell, a reporter for the Daily Bugle. Foswell manages to escape before being arrested, but Spider-Man knows he has broken his organization. This issue highlights Spider-Man's investigative skills, proving that he is not only a physically formidable fighter, but also a hero capable of solving mysteries and fighting organized crime. That's all for now, but don't forget to follow us for more Spider-Man adventures. See you soon.